What's up, everybody? My name is Dan Kornhauser.
And my name is Sam Teets.
Thank you guys for tuning in. We are here on the Grueling Truth Network, where legends speak. We're here to talk about the NFL draft, baby. The regular season is over. Bowl season is upon us. The Heisman Trophy finalists have already been named. We know what the college football playoff's going to be. Little by little, more players are declaring for the Senior Bowl and the other postseason pre-draft bowl games that they will use to try to impress scouts. And that means it's pretty much draft season, baby. So we're gonna go over a few different things today. I'm really excited. Sam, are you ready?
I'm ready to go, man. I've been so excited. I've been waiting to get to this point. I love college football season, but I also love draft season quite a bit. There's always so much stuff to talk about.
And we're gonna get going on that right now. And let's start it off. Let's start it off right, man. Let's talk quarterbacks. That's where the money is at. That's what takes teams to championships. We know a mediocre game managing quarterback is probably not going to win you the chip unless they come with a superstar defense, crazy receiving options, and an insane offensive line. They need a lot of help. Other than that, quarterbacks go first. Quarterbacks get the pretty girls. Quarterbacks get all the accolades. And more often than not, quarterbacks are top picks. Is this year's draft, Sam, one where you might see a quarterback rise through the draft process and take that top spot, which is currently held by Detroit Lions, of course? As of now, no one's really stepped up to the plate. Do you think that could change in the coming months?
I really don't. I mean, given how talented these defensive prospects are right now, look what Aiden Hutchinson's done. Look what Kayvon Thibodeau has done. Even what Derek Stingley's done, even though he didn't have a great year. I just don't think a quarterback's going to jump those guys. Kyle Hamilton has the body of a linebacker, but the versatility of like a slot corner playing safety. And you're not going to jump a guy like that with a quarterback from this class, especially because the guy everyone was hoping would be that jumper would be Malik Willis. He had 3 interceptions against Ole Miss. I think he had 3 against UL Monroe, and they lost that game. 3 against Middle Tennessee. You can't throw interceptions against those caliber teams. If you're a guy like Malik Willis, a transfer down from Auburn to Liberty, you have to dominate the lesser competition. And he has not dominated lesser competition. He's been a turnover machine at the wrong time of the year. The other guys everyone keeps talking about being potential first-round guys, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Kenny Pickett, some love for Carson Strong and Desmond Ridder is in there as well.
Yep.
And I think, honestly, we really don't know where the rank is going to be because Matt Corral has been solid, but really last year was kind of boomer bust. Had a lot of multi-interception games last year. A lot more explosive plays, though. This year was kind of conservative for him in the fact that he didn't do anything to screw it up, but he didn't do anything like to grab hold of the first spot either. Someone like Sam Howell was basically knocked off from the beginning because he had that one bad game against Virginia Tech to start the year, and everyone kind of wrote him off since then. Meanwhile, guys like Kenny Pickett, Carson Strong have been doing great throughout the year. I just don't see, though, if any of these quarterbacks came out last year, they'd be the 6th best quarterback in the draft. Think about that. They'd be behind Mac Jones, Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, and Trey Lance. So I don't see any of these guys possibly rising into the first overall pick. I don't know if any of them are going to be top 10 picks, honestly.
You know what? I'm going to agree with you on this point as well. As you said, with all these guys, they all have something about them that isn't quite right. And it's different for each guy. Willis is someone who has all the raw talent that you look for, but the production against lesser competition just isn't there. But he's got the physical ability you look for. He's got that escapability that the NFL is moving towards at the quarterback position. He's got the athleticism. He can make all the throws. It's just one of those things that out of all these quarterbacks in this draft class, he's had the least amount of talent around him, the worst coaching, and really everything's gone against him. Now, one could say that those are excuses. You're just, making things up for him to make him look good. An elite quarterback prospect would elevate those lesser teammates. And it sounds good, but as I'm sure you might agree that just because a guy's talented, just because he might be an NFL quarterback or a good NFL quarterback, might be a first-round pick, doesn't necessarily mean that when he's in college, he's to that level where he can take a bunch of nobodies from Liberty and elevate them to that next level. Is that something that concerns you with him?
A little bit. Getting a proper evaluation of Malik Willis is difficult because, like you said, he's playing with such lesser teammates around him. Just watch the Ole Miss game. He was under pressure, I swear, under pressure almost every time he took the ball. And that's the thing. You can't get a clear evaluation. Like, that was supposed to be the battle for QB1. But you can't really get a clear evaluation when one guy's laying on his back half the time. So it's hard to say how good he is. I really wish he just stayed at Auburn. Now, he was never going to beat up Bo Nix for a starting job because Bo Nix had like the Auburn pedigree from his family and stuff like that. It was all like backroom politics deciding that Bo Nix was going to win that job. But I do wish he had played at a higher level of competition with better teammates around him because that would make it so much easier to evaluate where he is as an NFL prospect. And maybe he's one of the guys that through the interview process, through the combine, that kind of stuff will come out and impress you. And maybe if he goes to one of these like at post bowl games to showcase himself, maybe then when he actually has teammates, guys who are trying to be NFL prospects and has a little bit more of an even playing field, we'll actually see where he ranks in these QB situations.
Now, all that being said, which one of these quarterbacks, as of right now, December 6th, 7/11, open 24/7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, who is your top quarterback prospect going into this draft this upcoming year? Right now, as of today.
I'm gonna take the safe option. The safe option is Matt Corral. It just is because he has, for this size, he is a smaller quarterback. I'll admit that. But for his size, he has good mobility, not Malik Willis level mobility, but good enough mobility to gash you for 15 to 20-yard runs if you give him too much space. He's got some toughness. He played through ankle injuries this year, so we know that. His arm talent, again, despite his size, is actually really good. The arm talent for this class overall is really good. Most of these guys can make every throw in the book. So I think that he is my top guy for now. He did a good job of eliminating the turnover problems that plagued him in 2020. He played against a lot of SEC competition. So I have a healthy respect for Matt Corral. That being said, I think the higher ceiling in terms of prospects, of course, Malik Willis, we'll talk about him. But Carson Strong from Nevada is a guy I think ceiling-wise probably has a higher ceiling than a lot of these guys in this draft. But I'm just not comfortable taking him that early.
How do you feel about Pickett?
Pickett worries me to some extent because we've seen these guys come out. We've seen some guys come out, have great final seasons to their college careers, and then it just doesn't, for whatever reason, translate. Now, Pickett, to me, I think Pickett has good fundamentals. I think Pickett is obviously a gamer, a competitor. He's been in college football for forever at this point. He's going to be a little bit older. Some of the concerns, the hand size, obviously, he wears 2 sets of gloves. There's concerns about, that translating to the NFL. I'm not always as worried about that kind of stuff. Arm strength to me is not as big of a deal as it is for some people. Hand size not as big a deal for me as some people. But I do worry because it's the one standout year, and he's looked very good this year. His tape is very positive. But other guys who've had one standout year in the past and just kind of fallen off, even guys like Zach Wilson, who has tape going back a couple of years at BYU, had one great year, and so far this season with the Jets, you can make the argument he's been the worst of the first-round rookie quarterbacks this year. So there's some concern for me just because it's 1 year where before this year, he was just another average quarterback who probably would not have been drafted whatsoever. He was just an average college quarterback. So I am a little worried about Pickett. However, I do think a team could fall in love with him and make him a first-round pick. Any of these guys really could get in that level.
Do you see any of these quarterbacks potentially over the next few months, the combine, the pro days, the lead up to the draft, the constantly churning rumor mill? Do you see any of these guys really stepping out and taking that QB1 lead? Or do you think it's more going to be more of a like who's your flavor type of guy as we move forward?
Oh, I think it's definitely a who's your flavor type of guy because obviously if you're looking for a quarterback that can move, that can be like your Lamar Jackson type guy, even to some extent a Kyler Murray type guy, it's going to be Malik Willis, and there's just no way around it. I told you Matt Corral can move pretty well, but he's not going to move with shifty way. There's things Malik Willis can do that Matt Corral can just not touch. And most of these guys have decent mobility. Actually, Carson Strong, who I mentioned, most of the other guys can run to some extent, but none of them are like Malik Willis. There's none of that twitch. So it is going to be a little bit of pick your flavor because Carson Strong to me is more of your stand in the pocket, big arm, chuck it downfield, get vertical kind of passer. That's who he is. Matt Corral to me is a little bit of everything, but he's been more conservative this year I think you're going to see him play a little bit more conservative style football, at least initially, when he gets to the pros. Someone like Sam Howell plays in a system in UNC that is not necessarily going to translate immediately to the NFL. But he had to go through a huge system change when he lost 2 running backs and 2 wide receivers to the NFL in this
Mhm.
past draft. Didn't have the talent around him this year, and went from basically running like 20 times in his college career to running like 100 times this year alone, and using his strong, sturdy frame to really benefit his team on the ground. Someone like that's going to be very interesting. Kenny Pickett, a guy who's a veteran, probably the oldest of this bunch,
Mhm.
and has that one standout season, but some limiting traits physically. There's going to be teams that are going to like that more than others. And someone like Desmond Ritter, all the physical traits in the world, very raw still. Ball placement, a little bit of an issue. Someone like him, there are going to be teams that are going to have him high on draft boards. There are going to be teams that won't have him evaluated until the 3rd round. So I think that's what we're looking at right now.
For me, with my quarterbacks, as of now, I go back and forth between Pickett and Corral, and I say that because I feel Pickett, what he's shown this season is every year he's gotten better. Every year he's taken that next step in his development, and he is now at the point where, I mean, after what, 3 or 4 years of starting, you expect some of these things, but he's at the point where he has total control of the offense. He has the leadership qualities you look for. He's got that moxie. He's got that it about him that you need at the quarterback position. And let's be honest, dude, it's not like Pitt's swimming in NFL talent. They're especially on the offensive side of the ball. This isn't some hotbed for NFL offensive linemen or running backs or whatever. So Kenny's doing it, and he's doing something special. And this year he had a great statistical season. I think he's one of the 4 Heisman finalists.
Yep.
Actually, and I don't know. He's kind of grown on me. I know Mike over here. Mike,
Good pastor, yeah.
yeah, good pastor. He's been on that train for quite some time now, and he is like on that hill, and he is the general. All right, he is the biggest Pickett fan right now. I think last week he said Pickett's the best quarterback in the nation in college football. Not the best draftable quarterback, the best quarterback, period. I thought that was a little foolish. I'm still going to go with Alabama's quarterback, Bryce Young. I'm still going to go with him, even in his young age, as my top quarterback moving forward. But he's kind of grown on me. I can't lie. Now,
Mike will beat that into you. Mike has a way of making sure you know his perspective and then eventually accept it. Trust me, I've been working with him for 2 years.
he is a strong personality, let's say.
That's what you get for being a coach of his level at the high school level. But
yeah,
I will say this: there is a lot to put into a quarterback's progression from year to year, and being able to do that over a prolonged period of time. That's part of the reason why I like Corral's, because Corral's gotten better every year. And Pickett, to some extent, you can say the same thing. Pickett has certainly gotten better every single year. My concerns with him a little bit are when it rains, it pours. When Pickett's having a bad game, he's just going to have a bad game. He's going to have a lot of turnover-worthy plays, a lot of potential interceptions in a row in a game that he's off. When he's on, he's insane. He's incredible this year. So I think a little bit that's a concern. I do want to see him hopefully go to one of those like Senior Bowl level games this year, because I want to see how he plays when it's kind of just sitting on a little bit of an even playing field. Everyone's a little bit new. Everyone's meeting each other for the first time. I want to see it because I want to see as much Pickett as possible, because he does have the potential to be a first-round pick. And right now, all the guys I have Matt Corral, Sam Howell, and Kenny Pickett to me are 3 guys that I would lean towards being first-round picks, all 3 of those guys. And then the guys like Malik Willis, who probably will be a first-round pick, but I don't favor him as one right now. Willis, Strong, and Ritter to me are like second-round guys.
All right, so let's move on from the quarterback position. We've talked about that a lot, but before we move on, I do want to say that the Grueling Truth is powered by betting.net. Betting.net is your best bet for finding the online casino or sportsbook that's right for you. So go on and give betting.net a visit. Now let's move on from the quarterback position, and let's talk about risers and fallers. We have that every year, someone who starts the year at the top of draft boards, tons of potential, coming off, a great junior season or a great sophomore season, and they shit the bed. They get hurt. They have a terrible statistical season. They're a quarterback and their team sucks. If you have to pinpoint one prospect from the beginning of the season till right now, before bowl season, Who's the one prospect that has significantly fallen down your board?
Well, there's one guy who's not even going to be going to the draft this year who was projected to be a Heisman candidate and
I know
potentially the
who it
first overall
is.
pick. Spencer Rattler from Oklahoma is pretty
That's the
clearly the
one.
guy. I mean, there's just no one else. Maybe there's someone else who's fallen off worse than him. Maybe there is someone out there. If they
Yeah.
are, I've never met them before. I've never seen them play before, and I don't know who they are. But Spencer Rattler to me has to be the guy. I mean, this dude. Well, I think he could have been drafted. Frankly, if he decided to go to the draft, I think he would have been drafted, probably in the mid rounds. But from my PR perspective, from a playing perspective, I mean, this dude, he's transferring. Where is he going to transfer to now? It's like this guy has had so many issues between like the videos coming out of him just shit talking teammates and all this kind of stuff, from him not being like viewed as a supportive teammate, leader, that kind of stuff, to where's the development? He's not gotten better over his time in Oklahoma. He's the same guy this year that he was last year. He would rather throw the ball into double coverage down the field, 45 yards downfield to a receiver that's not open, than throw a check down. And it's just who he is. And he thinks he's this elite athlete who can run all over the place. He thinks he's Kyler Murray. He's not. He's going to get run over by defensive linemen if he tries running for 10 yards. So he's not an elite athlete. He's not going to be able to run the ball at the NFL level. And he's just so, like, all the arm talent in the world, all this potential. And he just wastes it trying to do these crazy plays. And it makes no sense. To me, it's maturity is the problem. It's just mental maturity and decision making. And he's not adjusted that during his time at Oklahoma. It's why Caleb Williams took his spot. And it's why he has to transfer to probably go to a less competitive program if he wants to try to get his draft stock back up.
I mean, it's really hard to argue with that. And I think this question, it's kind of weird because I feel like with a question like this, like who's your biggest faller or who's your biggest riser, it's really easy to go to the quarterback position because like I started the show, it is the most talked about position. It's the most important position. When the team does well, even if the quarterback goes for 100 yards, if they win, oh man, this quarterback's doing great. All he does is win. And if they lose, but he has 350 yards and 4 touchdowns, but they lose, you're going to say, oh man, well, this kid puts up crazy stats, but he's not a winner. He can't lead his team to victory. So quarterbacks are always the easiest positions to talk about. And I'm going to take that out here too, but I'm not going to go with him. I'm not going to go with Spencer. I'm going to go with Sam Howell because Howell came into the year as a likely potential top pick as well, a top 3 pick potentially. I feel like I'm trying to think of a quarterback in recent memory who, like Howell, has had a couple of years starting and then came into the season with these high expectations just to be simply
Yeah, be okay, but not great.
Yeah, like someone who you expected to be a top 3 pick, you expect to see certain criteria on the field. And it goes beyond the raw stats and production and the numbers. It's stuff you want to see on tape. You want to see his body language. You want to see when he gets hit in the mouth, how does he handle it? When the team is down by 10 points late in the game, does the team rally around him, or is somebody else the voice and the leader on that offense? There's different things you want to look for. With Sam, I just haven't seen it. Pickett has it. You see it every week. I've watched a few of his games already, and you see it. You can see his body language. You see how the guys on his team respond to him. I don't see that with Sam Howell, and I get feelings of like a Mitch Trubisky type of thing. I know Mitch was different because he only had the 1 year starting, and he couldn't beat out a wide receiver, a future NFL wide receiver, to start at quarterback in college. So it is different. But when I mentioned Trubisky, I mentioned just more of like that guy who's got the physical talent. He looks the part. I mean, Trubisky ended up being, a top 3 pick when it was all said and done. So, maybe it's a bad example. He's someone who really rose as opposed to someone who dropped. But I don't know. I get shades of Mitch Trubisky for some reason when I watch Sam Howell and when I think about Sam Howell coming into the league. I don't know, but I'm going to go with him for now. That might change moving forward. We'll see. I don't know if I'm going to have a first round grade on Howell. Normally when I do my grades, I'm actually a pretty rough grader. As those who know me would tell you, I am not easily impressed, and that mindset goes over to my grades and projections and stuff like that. I lean more on the conservative side with my first round grades and my projections and stuff like that. But I don't know if I'm going to give him a first round grade. I normally have around 20 first round grades or so. I don't know if he's gonna get one of them, but it's definitely something that I'm going to be keeping an eye on moving forward, seeing what the rumors are, see what meetings and go with him and stuff like that. But I'm interested to see what goes on with this quarterback position. Is going to be one that we talk about a lot in the next few months. There's still a lot of sorting to be done, and it's going to be exciting. But let's flip the coin, all right? From someone who has disappointed and fallen off like Owen Hart to someone who came into the year as a relative unknown, maybe wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the year, but has played his way into the conversation. Maybe he went from an undrafted guy to a mid-round guy. Maybe he went from a mid-round guy to a second or third round guy, a top 50, top 60 kind of guy. Or maybe it's a guy who, was a complete no-name at the beginning of the year. Now all of a sudden is a first-round pick. Who has risen up your boards this season?
Well, one guy who jumps out to me, I just love the defensive side of the ball, so I'm going to stay there for this one. David Ojabo from Michigan.
Oh,
we talk about
that's
was I take your guy?
Boy. Yo, that's my boy.
Yeah, I love what he's done so far this year. I understand there's some people who are like, is it Ojabo being good? Is it Aiden Hutchinson just buying him so much space and stuff like that? Is it Aiden Hutchinson just drawing all this attention? I think Ojabo's legit. I really do. I think what he's done this year, he's about 6'5", 250, so maybe a little bit on the lighter side. Probably going to be like outside linebacker. Although I think you could try him defensive end, see how it goes from there. Mm-hmm. I like what Ojabo's done, and you have to say, in terms of risers, this guy was playing 30 snaps in 2020, and now comes out this year, 41 pressures, double-digit sacks. He's been a monster. I think there's still some room for improvement in terms of dropping him in coverage if they do that against the run, maybe a little bit. But you have to consider this guy has maybe 550 snaps in college. You get in the NFL, this guy still has a lot to learn. And I love what I see from his pass rushing plan right now. So the fact that he's already so developed as a pass rusher with these few number of snaps in college, or at least at a major program, I'm very excited with what Ojabo can do. And frankly, he's going to be probably taking the first round. It's going to be close. There's a lot of really good edge rushers, so he might fall to the second round just because of that. Yep. That and the cornerback class cornerback class are very strong this year. So them and the edge rushers might drop a little bit. But I could see Ojabo certainly going anywhere from maybe pick 20 or pick 15 all the way down to pick 32.
All right. So Ojabo, that's my boy. I'm very disappointed that you shouted him out. So you know what? I'm going to shift gears and I'm going to stay in the Big Ten, but I'm going to go to the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to go to their rival, Ohio State, and I want to mention Nicholas Pettit-Freer. This is an offensive tackle who came into the year as a literal unknown. They already had an NFL caliber left tackle in was it Muncie or
Thayer Munford?
Munford, that's the one. They already had an NFL caliber tackle waiting. This kid was good enough that they kicked him into guard. And he held his own all season. He's got the prototype size you look for, 6'5", 315, give or take. But he's got everything you look for. He's played very well on the edge, on an island. I know Hutchinson gave him some fits when Ohio State and Michigan played, but when you're talking about Hutchinson, you're talking about a likely top 3 pick, pending something unforeseen, and an absolute guarantee top 5 pick, in my opinion. He had a dominant season, and it's to the point where he's even one of the final 4 finalists for the Heisman. We don't see defensive players that get that kind of love, especially when it comes to the Heisman. So the fact that his name is even on the list, albeit in a down season, there's no superstar quarterbacks, there's no, Lawrences or whoever. There's none of those. But I've been very impressed with this young man, and he may very well have played himself into a first round appearance. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he was a first round pick at this point. I don't know if I'll grade him in the first round. I do have to see more Ohio State film of him, but he's impressed. He's a guy, like I said, who went from a virtual unknown to anyone outside of Ohio State to a top 32 prospect on most boards. So let's see if he could take that and kick it up a notch. But
Yeah, I recently did a mock draft where I had him going late in the first round. I think that's probably where he's going to be, just because this tackle class has some good prospects. So really,
yes,
I think there's 3 or 4 tackles I feel very comfortable with, and after that, I'm like, maybe second round guys. Petit Frere is kind of toeing the line there. He's right there, just because it's hard to overlook what happened against Michigan. I understand it's Aiden Hutchinson. It's still kind of hard to overlook what happened against Michigan, because they actually, Ohio State was putting Thayer Munford at left tackle partially for that game. They were trying to game plan around Ojabo and Hutchinson by shifting him and Petit Frere around the line, and it still didn't really work out that much. But I think he struggled against Michigan. He had some issues against Arnold Ebikebi at Penn State and a little bit against Nebraska. So I think there's some concerns there. So he had some struggles against some of the better guys he faced, but I still think, given how much teams need tackle play, if you're a team like the Green Bay Packers towards the end of the first round, and you've had injuries at tackle in the past, probably somebody you want to keep an eye on.
Now, we are going into bowl season, like I said earlier. A lot of riveting matchups. Looking at the bowl slate, are there any particular player matchups, corner, receiver, O-line, D-line, whatever, or any unit matchups, this team's offense versus this team's defense, that stick out to you, that at least in the NFL world, on the scouting platform, any of those games stand out to you?
Let's keep it nice and simple. Let's look at Cincinnati versus Alabama. Because I want to see Alabama's offense versus Cincinnati's defense. Because if you look at the all-conference team for Cincinnati, basically the entire first team for that conference is Cincinnati defenders. And rightfully so, because they are all legit. They have a ton of linebackers, defensive linemen, guys in the secondary who are all fantastic future NFL prospects. But I want to see how they match up against a loaded Alabama offense. Now, granted, their offensive line probably is not where it's been the past couple of years. But I do want to see if Najee Sanders, someone who's probably fallen in terms of his draft stock over the past couple of months, I want to see how he matches up against guys like Evan Neal in that offensive line. I want to see how their linebackers hold up, potentially having to deal with climbing offensive linemen or tight end play. And I want to see, above all, what Kobe Bryant and Ahmad Gardner can do against Jamison Williams, because Jamison Williams destroyed Georgia this past week. And I want to see, and they don't have, it's so unfortunate they don't have John Mechie right now, because John Mechie has the ACL injury. But I wish they had John Mechie, because I would love to see those two receivers against this Cincinnati Bearcats secondary that also has Javon Hicks at safety, who's a pretty good player himself, Brian Cook at safety, who's going to one of these Senior Bowl level games. I want to see what this secondary does against the Alabama wide receiver core and Bryce Young.
It's the Mechie injury is really, really shitty. I feel kind of bad. I think he got a torn ACL or something like that in the first half or early in that game.
They believe it's an ACL injury.
That's brutal, man. That comes at the worst time. I hate these late season injuries, because especially with speedsters like Mechie was supposed to be, another potential first round pick, but hopefully he gets better. Luckily ACL injuries aren't what they used to be. They're no longer ending careers or putting guys out for 2 years or something like that. So he should be fine, but it's very unfortunate. What I'm looking forward to is the Arkansas-Penn State game. And I say that because Penn State's defense has been very interesting this year, and Arkansas has a wide receiver who is massive and who may very well be one of the first players at his position to come off the board. And we still have a long ways to go between now and then, but Treylon Burks is the truth. He's big. He's athletic. My only question with him comes with separation. I wonder how he's not the most silky route runner. He's not on the level of like Jerry Jeudy, for example. Jeudy, coming out of college, was an elite route runner. The feet were quick and precise. The hips, the movement, everything was coordinated. And separation was not a question with Jeudy. But I think it's a little bit of question here with Burks. He looks, I want to say, more fluid than, say, a DK Metcalf, for example, who Metcalf, the big knock on him throughout college was stiff hips, his inability to get in and out of cuts, partially because he's so big and muscular and thick and ridiculous for a receiver. But they were concerns nonetheless. I don't see those kinds of concerns with Burks, but the separation is an issue, and I want to see how he does against this Penn State defense.
Well, yeah, you got Joey Porter Jr. You got quite a few guys. You got Joey Porter Jr. and Tariq Castro Fields, I believe, as your corners out there for Penn State. Plus, Jaquan Brisker at safety. That's another loaded secondary there. That's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. I guess, especially against someone like Burks, who you said. We have some potentially freakish guys in this wide receiver class. Burks is huge. Drake London's pretty big, and he's so productive this year. Jameson Williams is just lightning fast. There's a lot of interesting receivers in this class.
And Burks dominated against Alabama. He showed up. And he showed that north-south deep speed to just outrun everybody. And this is Alabama. This isn't, some slack Big 12 defense, or something like that. This is the best of the best. So the fact that he did so well and he showed up on that big stage was impressive. But as we know, college defenses are different. College schemes are different. So they're designed to get their players the ball, and guys like him will always get the rock. But he's impressed me, and I want to see how he does against, like you said, a very good secondary with a bunch of defensive backs that should be drafted, and Fields might even be a first-round pick if things go well for him this postseason circuit. I don't have him that high, but I've seen other rankings and stuff like that with him being up in the top 32, so it'll be interesting to see how that matchup goes. But let's move on to the final topic of our first podcast, which I've had a blast so far. I'm looking forward to doing these every week. But the final one, and this is a big one because there's been a lot that's gone on. Who is your current top prospect at the top of your board right now?
All right, let me pull the numbers up here to back this up. But I'm taking, it's got to be, I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment. I fully say that with regards to Aiden Hutchinson and everything he's done the past 2 weeks. And the first time I saw people putting Aiden Hutchinson at the top of draft boards ahead of Kayvon Thibodeaux, I'm like, all right, this is an immediate knee-jerk reaction. That's all it is. But then you sit down and you start thinking a little bit. Mm-hmm. And while Kayvon Thibodeaux has been good this year, it feels like teams like Utah have been able to kind of scheme him out of games, remove him from impact. Like, he's not impacting games the same way you would expect someone with his athleticism too. And he's had a couple of great performances this year. Mm-hmm. But Aiden Hutchinson went out against Ohio State, against Thayer Munford and Nicholas Petit-Frere, two guys who are probably going to be taking at least the top 2 rounds. 15 pressures that game. And I think I had 3 sacks or 3.5 sacks, whatever it was in that matchup. Crazy. And he did well against Penn State. And he crushed against Indiana and Michigan State and Nebraska and Wisconsin, all these other schools. Mm-hmm. He's been racking up. He basically single-handedly wrecked the draft stock for Jackson Kirkland in Washington in like week 2. Mm-hmm. So he's gone up against 2 now guys who were at one time viewed as first-round picks at left tackle and destroyed them. So to me, Aiden Hutchinson is going to be the top pick, or he's the top pick on my board right now, because this guy is 6'5", I think 6'5", 265, or 6'6", 265. Well built, strong as hell, probably stronger than Kayvon Thibodeaux. He turns better than him. He's got better agility, I think, in terms of like running the 3-cone and stuff like that. This guy was number 2 on Bruce Feldman for the Athletic, number 2 on his freaks list ahead of the year, because his athleticism is comparable to Kwity Paye last year. And Kwity Paye, his big hype last year was the athleticism. He's not as good as Kwity Paye in terms of athletically, but he's close. He's going to run the 3-cone insanely quick. He's going to be able to bend and turn quicker than a lot of the guys you're going to talk about. And maybe Thibodeaux has a little bit more natural bend. He's a little bit leaner, a little bit faster. Mm-hmm. But Hutchinson has so much power, and he's so good at attacking the inside shoulder of offensive tackles. From what I've seen, I like Thibodeaux. I think Thibodeau's going to be a top 5 pick. I can't leave Aiden Hutchinson out of the number 1 spot.
Will your next mock draft have Aiden Hutchinson going number 1 to my Detroit Lions?
It probably will.
Spoiler alert,
folks. Change it.
Spoiler alert. Yeah. Well, before I answer that question, we do have a comment. So I want to shout out Gunner's boss. And it's not Bob and Dan tonight, but that means you guys are watching my other show. So thank you. Dan and Bob will be tomorrow night. We'll be talking NBA and all things basketball. And we'll have Steve Risley on with us. So that'll be fun. But tonight it's Dan and Sam. Woo! So show my boy Sam some love, Gunner's boss. Get the name right, man. And of course, I got to throw some love to our sponsors. Do one of these for you. Here we go. It's a little slow to pull up, but we want to find the best place to bet for you. Betting.net offers expert and user reviews for every online sportsbook and casino in your state. Give them a follow, give them a check out. Betting.net. My top prospect has changed a little bit. I don't like injured players. I don't like injury-prone players. The biggest, as we've heard over the years, a player's best ability is availability. Thibodeau getting hurt, missing a few games was a little troublesome for me. It wasn't enough to knock him off my top of my rankings, however. He has everything you look for in a pass rusher. He's got the length. He's got the agility off the edge. He's got everything physically you want. The only questions with him come with the lack of pass rush moves, which is fine. He's still in college. Once he gets to the NFL, it's hopeful that an NFL coaching staff can fix that and help him get to that next level, use his hands a little better, prevent offensive tackles from getting into his body and controlling him, stuff like that. Because like you said, Utah was able to scheme around him. And let's be honest, at least in college football, coaches can scheme all they want, but a top pick is going to do top pick things at some point during those games. So that is a little concerning to me as well, but it wasn't enough to knock him off. The potential is just oozing, and it's so impressive. And before we wrap things up, I have one final question, because this is something that I've been playing with in my mind for a few weeks now, and I can't decide what I want to do with this player. Derek Stingley Jr. We've seen him be everything from a top 5, potential top 3 pick to maybe a little lower, but he hasn't played. And when he has, he looked bad this year. As we know, his freshman tape is maybe some of the most impressive tape that we'll see in such a young corner prospect. But he has not been quite right since. The injuries are a big problem. Where do you stand on this kid? Because I see different mock drafts, different rankings, things like that, and he hasn't fallen. He's still seen as a pretty much a lock for a top 10 pick in most cases. How do you feel about this kid right now compared to like at the beginning of the year?
Much worse. And I'm closer. I'm close to where you are, because his freshman year was phenomenal. Possibly one of the best years we've ever seen from a cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing, and we expecting him to repeat that every year would have just been foolish, because it was so good. He never could have gotten back to do that 3 years in a row. If he had, you might as well just put him in every Hall of Fame possible already. But last year was such a step off of that, and it was still good. It was still good enough for me to consider him cornerback 1. But came into this year, and frankly, he looked disinterested. He looked like he did not care. And it was 3. He's only playing 3 games, so we didn't see the full season from him. But he did not actively go after tackles, and he has the ability to tackle. We've seen it before. He can be a good tackler. He did not want to show it this year. He did not want to bring that to the table. And frankly, the ability, like giving it 49 yards, I think he gave up against UCLA and a touchdown the first game of the season. He just did not look like him. He wasn't active. He wasn't. And then he played McNeese the second game, and then Central Michigan, and then got hurt, and he was done. So we didn't get to see a lot of him. But on that, I'm thoroughly not overwhelmed by what I saw from him in his last year at LSU. And it's so disappointing to me, because if we got more tape from him, maybe he would have leveled out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why I think people are not moving him down draft boards is, one, just the physicality he has, just some of the physical traits he has, but also to move him down draft boards, people want to have a corner taken in the top 10 of their mock drafts. And while the cornerback class is great this year, I'm not sure there's another guy in this class that you consider taking with a top 5 pick. But people have got it in their heads now that there has to be a corner taken in the top 5, which is why they're still putting Stingley up there. Because if they remove him, there's not going to be a corner taken in probably the top 7 picks. So I think that's throwing people for a little bit of a mental loop. I don't think it's really evaluation, maybe so much as the mental game at this point. But to me, it's hard because by putting someone over Derek Stingley, you're going against the grain. You're also saying, here's a guy who I think will hold up against a guy who potentially has the best physical traits of any corner in the draft. And he's had the production. People are trying to go back to that season and say, well, look, we just keep him healthy. We just get him engaged. But if you have a guy who's not engaged, doesn't want to play his best at all times, I'm not sure I want you on my team. And we've got other players in this first round. Guys like Ahmad Gardner, who's had one of, if not the best years of any cornerback in college football this year.
Very solid.
Guys like Andrew Booth Jr. has all the physical traits that Derek Stingley has. Someone like Trent McDuffie, who's lacking this. Trent McDuffie lacking the size, but an elite shutdown corner in college and did not play in the slot almost at all. He can play outside, and he will play outside in the NFL. Kyer Elam, who's got size, more size than people realize. Yep. Closer to Ahmad Gardner and Bill than I think people realize. He's like 6'2", 196.
Big boy.
And Gardner's like 6'3", 200.
Yep.
I mean, it's like Roger McCreary, another one of the most productive corners in college football this year. Even Martin Emerson, who I'm not as high on as most people, but some people view Martin Emerson as a first-round pick, so you can have that. With all those guys as potential first-round picks, I think there's a chance Stingley gets jumped, but we have to wait and see how this whole pre-draft process plays out, the combine, everything like that, because we know there's going to be a corner is going to run slow in the combine. Someone's going to be 2 inches shorter than they never measured in college or something like that, and things will flip-flop like that. But right now, I think Stingley, it's kind of given the de facto number 1 corner spot because no one else is really taking it from him.
Now, before we wrap things up, one last comment and question from Gunner's boss. Is Bryce Young the clear-cut Heisman winner? I'm going to give you the short answer, and the answer is yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unfortunate. I would love to see Aiden Hutchinson win, frankly. I'm a huge defensive guy. I would love to see Hutchinson win.
Oh, yeah.
But you're telling me this Hutchinson season is on the same level as a Charles Woodson season from back in the day. It's just not, unfortunately. And it was a great year. Don't get me wrong, but there are other guys in college football who put up the same numbers in terms of pressures and sacks. And frankly, Will Anderson Jr. not being on the ballot is it kind of rubs me the wrong way when C.J. Stroud's on there. Yep. And when C.J. Stroud's on there and Kenny Pickett and Bryce Young have better numbers, but that's another discussion for another time. I think it is Bryce Young. Beating up Georgia the way he did without John Mechie for most of the second half is kind of just it closed it for me. After the Auburn game, he was not the Heisman winner. After the Georgia game, he absolutely is.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a couple of weeks ago or last week it was. I was talking with Mike and Steve Risley. We were doing a college football show, and I asked that same question. I said, "What are we looking at Heisman wise?" Everybody had a different Heisman winner. That's just the way it was at the time. A week later, and things are a little different, if you want to say that very, very conservatively. And we have one more comment before we go off. Gunner's boss, you're the MVP of the show. He asks, where is Sefton? I love when he is here commenting on the show. Sefton is one of our regular commentator people who watch our show every week on Wednesdays when we do our NFL Pick'em show. Sefton is on it. He's on there every week, typing away, sending us like a dozen questions or comments a show. Really adds a nice spice to it. I miss Sefton. Sefton is one of my favorite people on Wednesdays. He's better than my 2 co-hosts. But thank you.
He's probably more agreeable than your 2 co-hosts.
Oh no. He's just as stubborn in his opinion.
Oh, geez.
Believe me. But that's what makes it great, baby. That's what makes it great. So I want to thank Gunner's boss and everyone else who tuned in to watch our inaugural NFL draft show. And I want to wrap things up, and I want to show some love once again to betting.net. It's not just sports betting. Betting.net compares the best online casinos. So sit back, relax, and play the top online slots, poker, and table games. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am Dan Kornhauser.
I'm Sam Teets.
Woo! And I want to thank you guys for tuning in to our draft show. We're going to see about maybe making it a little spicier of a name but the NFL Draft Show is okay for our first episode. We'll see where we go from here. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for tuning into the Grueling Truth Network, where legends speak. I'm Dan Kornhauser. For Sam, have a good night.